There are moments when being deeply sensitive feels like a gift unlike any other. You can sense when someone needs comfort before they ever say a word. You can feel the unspoken emotions in a room, and you can connect with people in a way that seems to go beyond what is visible. And yet, there are also moments when that same sensitivity feels heavy. When the emotions of others linger inside you as if they were your own, when your heart aches under the weight of caring too much, and when you wonder why something that feels so natural can also be so exhausting. This is the paradox that many empaths live with every day. Their ability to feel deeply is both the very thing that makes them who they are and the very thing that can leave them feeling overwhelmed. In this video, we are going to explore why empathy feels both like a blessing and a curse, and what it means to hold both truths at the same time. Chapter 1. The Beauty of Deep Connection. For an empath, the way connection is experienced is not something ordinary, and it is certainly not something shallow. It is layered, textured, and deeply felt, often in ways that are hard to describe to others. While many people experience relationships through conversations, shared experiences, or surface-level interactions, an empath steps into connection with their whole being. They don't just hear the words that are spoken. They feel the quiet pauses in between them. They sense the subtle shifts in tone. They notice the hesitation in a person's expression, and they often pick up on what isn't being said. It is as if their entire inner world leans forward when another person enters their space, and in that leaning, they begin to absorb pieces of that person's truth. This ability to go beneath the surface is what makes connection feel so extraordinary for empaths. A conversation that others might quickly forget can live in the mind and heart of an empath for days. A moment of shared laughter, a quiet look of relief when someone feels understood, or even a vulnerable silence can take root in them and bloom into a memory that carries meaning. Life for empaths is rarely lived in black and white. It is lived in vibrant, layered colors. Each interaction carries a richness that deepens their experience of the world. This is what makes them feel both deeply alive and deeply aware of the people around them. There is a quiet safety people often feel in the presence of an empath. Many individuals find themselves opening up in ways they never expected, sharing stories or emotions that have remained unspoken for years. The empath may not even ask probing questions, yet their presence invites honesty. Why does this happen? Because people sense that an empath is not just listening, but truly understanding. They feel that their inner world is being held with care rather than judged or dismissed. This creates bonds that are rare, bonds that bypass the superficial and go straight to the heart of human connection. For empaths, these moments of deep connection are not just meaningful, they are nourishing. They often give life its purpose. Where some may find meaning in recognition, status, or achievement, an empath often finds it in these fleeting but powerful encounters of genuine understanding. Sitting with someone in their truth, being fully present without needing to fix, and offering the kind of listening that makes another person feel less alone. That is where an empath feels most aligned. It may not be grand or flashy, but it is deeply significant. And because empaths experience the emotions of others so vividly, they often carry a sense of shared humanity that runs through their every interaction. They know what it feels like to carry pain, to hold joy, to sit in confusion, and to stand in hope. This awareness allows them to meet others where they are, without needing to pretend or demand something different. It is in this place of acceptance that true connection blossoms. It is why so many people describe their encounters with empaths as comforting or grounding. It is because they feel fully seen. The beauty of this kind of connection is that it often ripples out far beyond the moment itself. Someone who feels understood by an empath might carry that relief with them for weeks, even years. They may look back on that conversation during difficult times and remember what it felt like to be cared for without condition. Empaths rarely see the full extent of their impact because their gift is often subtle, but it's real. They plant seeds of understanding in the lives of others, and those seeds continue to grow long after the empath has moved on. And yet, even in this beauty, there is a double edge, because while the gift of deep connection can uplift, it also asks much of the empath. To feel this deeply is to open oneself to the weight of others' emotions, and sometimes that weight is more than one person can hold. Still, in these opening moments when connection is pure and honest, empaths are reminded of why their sensitivity is not just a challenge, but one of the most extraordinary gifts they carry. Chapter 2. The weight of absorbing too much. For many empaths, one of the most difficult parts of their sensitivity is the way emotions seem to settle inside them, almost as if they have a sponge for a heart. They don't just notice how others are feeling, they often carry it. What begins as quiet awareness can quickly become a weight that feels almost physical. It isn't always dramatic or obvious. Sometimes it's as simple as walking into a room and sensing a heaviness that no one is speaking about. Sometimes it's listening to someone share a story and realizing that those words do not leave when the conversation ends. They echo and repeat as though they've taken root inside. This is the double-edged nature of empathy. The very thing that makes an empath so open and compassionate is also the thing that leaves them vulnerable to emotional overload. They don't just see sadness, they feel it. They don't just witness frustration, they absorb it. And when that happens day after day, even small encounters can build into something overwhelming. What others let go of easily can stay with an empath for hours, days, or even longer. It is not unusual for empaths to feel drained without being able to explain exactly why. They might think back over the day and realize they didn't experience anything particularly stressful for themselves. And yet, they are tired in a way that goes beyond physical exhaustion. That tiredness often comes from carrying emotions that aren't truly theirs, but feel just as real. It's like being handed invisible bags by everyone you meet, until suddenly you're struggling under a weight you never noticed being piled onto you. Over time, this constant absorption can blur the boundaries between what belongs to the empath and what belongs to someone else. The lines between self and other begin to feel unclear. Was that burst of sadness really yours, or did it come from the person you just spent time with? Was that wave of frustration something you genuinely felt, or something you picked up from the room you walked into? These questions become familiar because empaths often carry feelings that don't actually originate from within them. And this blurring can create confusion, leaving them unsure of where they end and others begin. The impact of this runs deeper than most realize. Carrying too much doesn't just lead to emotional fatigue. It can shape the way empaths make decisions, how they view themselves, and even how they move through the world. When you are constantly absorbing emotions, it becomes harder to hear your own voice clearly. It becomes harder to know what you truly feel and what you have simply taken on. This can lead to second guessing, hesitating, or feeling disconnected from your own sense of direction. What makes this weight even heavier is that empaths rarely choose to absorb consciously. It happens naturally, almost instinctively, like breathing in the atmosphere around them. In a crowded space, they might leave feeling unsettled without knowing why. In a one-on-one conversation, they might find themselves replaying the words and feelings long after. It isn't about weakness or lack of control. It's about a nervous system that is tuned so finely to others that it responds without effort. The blessing within this is obvious. Empaths can walk alongside people in a way that feels deeply supportive because they truly feel what others are going through. But the curse shows up when there is no filter, no place to put down the emotions that have been picked up along the way. This is when empathy turns heavy. This is when the gift of feeling deeply begins to feel like carrying too much. The weight of absorbing too much often shows itself in subtle ways. The empath might feel irritable without knowing why. They might withdraw into solitude because their inner world feels too loud. They might find themselves longing for quiet moments, not because they dislike people, but because silence feels like the only place where they can finally breathe again. These needs are not signs of weakness. They are natural responses to being overwhelmed by input that never seems to stop. And yet, because empaths are so often seen as strong sources of comfort for others, they may not always feel permission to step back. They may feel guilty for needing rest or selfish for wanting space. They may try to push through, thinking that their ability to absorb is something they should always be able to handle. But the truth is, no one can carry everyone else's feelings indefinitely without paying a cost. For empaths, the cost often shows up as burnout, emotional fatigue, or a sense of disconnection from themselves. It is important to recognize that absorbing too much is not the same as caring too much. Caring is intentional. It's a choice to be present, to listen, and to support. Absorbing, on the other hand, is often unintentional. It bypasses choice, entering in through open channels that empaths may not even realize are there. And that is why it feels so heavy. Because it's not just about wanting to help. It's about carrying things you never asked to carry. Chapter 3. The Inner Conflict of Identity. For many empaths, one of the deepest struggles isn't just the emotions they feel from others, but the way those emotions start to tangle with their own. Over time, this creates an inner conflict that touches the very core of their identity. It's as if they are standing between two mirrors, one reflecting who they are and the other reflecting who everyone else needs them to be. The tension between these two images becomes exhausting, leaving the empath wondering which reflection is true and which one they have been living through. The conflict begins with something simple yet powerful. When an empath consistently absorbs the emotions, needs, and expectations of those around them, their own voice can begin to feel quiet. At first, they may not even notice this shift because blending with others feels natural to them. They are so attuned to the moods and energy of the people they encounter that adjusting themselves feels like second nature. But with every small adjustment, something personal can be set aside. A preference is muted. A feeling is pushed back. A need is delayed. And piece by piece, they begin to lose sight of the self beneath all of the roles they take on. This is where the inner conflict of identity grows. Deep down, The empath knows they are more than the feelings they absorb. They know they have their own dreams, desires, and values, but because they are constantly pulled into the experiences of others, it can feel difficult to distinguish what truly belongs to them. It's not unusual for an empath to pause and ask themselves, do I feel this because it is mine or because I've absorbed it from someone else? That question, though simple, is profound. It highlights how blurry the boundaries between self and others can become. Over time, this blurring of identity can lead to confusion. The empath might feel deeply connected to people around them, but strangely disconnected from themselves. They may know how to comfort, how to support, and how to adjust to meet the needs of others. But when asked what they truly want or need, they may not have a clear answer. This gap can create feelings of emptiness or even self-doubt. How do you define who you are when so much of your inner world is shaped by what you've taken in from others? The conflict doesn't end there. Because empaths are often praised for their sensitivity and kindness, they may feel pressure to maintain that role even when it is exhausting. They may begin to believe that their value comes only from how much they give or how well they understand others. And while these are beautiful traits, they do not define the whole of who they are. Yet, the empath may feel torn between who they are expected to be and who they are beneath all of those expectations. This tug of war between external roles and internal truth can make identity feel unstable. Another layer of the conflict is that empaths often feel two opposing desires within themselves. On one hand, they long for connection, because connection is where they shine. They feel alive when they are able to tune into others, to offer support, and to feel a sense of shared understanding. On the other hand, they long for solitude, because solitude is where they can finally hear their own voice without the noise of everyone else's emotions. These two needs, connection and solitude, often feel like they compete with one another. And so the empath may oscillate between closeness and withdrawal, never fully satisfied, always searching for balance. This inner conflict of identity is not just a matter of confusion. It can also carry emotional weight. When an empath feels disconnected from their own sense of self, they may feel guilty for wanting space. They may feel selfish for trying to draw boundaries. They may feel anxious about prioritizing their own needs because for so long they have been conditioned to center everyone else's. But ignoring their own identity comes at a cost. The longer they set themselves aside, the heavier the emptiness becomes until it feels like they are living life for others rather than with themselves at the center. And yet, within this conflict lies an opportunity. Because empaths are naturally reflective, they often reach a point where they begin to question the patterns they live in. They start to notice when they've absorbed too much. They begin to recognize when their voice has been drowned out. These moments of self-awareness can be painful because they shine a light on how much of themselves has been neglected. But they are also the first steps toward rebuilding a sense of identity that is strong, balanced, and deeply authentic. The truth is, empaths are not defined solely by how much they can carry for others. They are not only their sensitivity, they are not only their kindness, they are also their creativity, their curiosity, their passions, their strengths, their unique perspectives. These parts of identity deserve to take up space too. They deserve to be honored, explored, and expressed fully. When empaths begin to embrace these truths, the inner conflict starts to soften. The two mirrors no longer reflect competing images. Instead, they reflect a fuller, more integrated self, one that can feel deeply for others while staying firmly grounded in who they are. Chapter 4. Finding Balance in the Gift. After the confusion, the heaviness, and the inner tug-of-war that often comes with being an empath, there eventually comes a moment when the need for balance becomes undeniable. This balance is not about shutting down sensitivity or becoming less caring. It is about learning to live with empathy in a way that feels sustainable and affirming rather than overwhelming. For many empaths, this chapter in their journey becomes the most liberating because it is where they discover that their gift doesn't have to drain them. It can nourish them too. Finding balance starts with one of the hardest lessons for empaths: boundaries. For a long time, many empaths resist the idea of boundaries because they fear it means closing themselves off. But in truth, boundaries are not walls. They are doorways that allow in what is healthy while keeping out what is harmful. When an empath learns to set limits, they are not abandoning their gift of caring. They are protecting the space that allows that gift to thrive. They begin to understand that saying no to what depletes them is also saying yes to what allows them to show up with strength and presence. Another part of balance comes from recognizing that self-care is not selfish. Many empaths grow up feeling that their worth comes from always being available to others, but eventually they realize that their ability to care for others is only as strong as their ability to care for themselves. This shift can be life-changing. It teaches them that rest is not a luxury, but a necessity. It teaches them that recharging is not indulgence, but a form of responsibility. By prioritizing their well-being, empaths don't become less giving. They become more grounded, which makes their empathy more sustainable over the long term. Balance also emerges through the practice of discernment. When every emotion feels intense and every need feels urgent, it is easy for empaths to lose sight of what actually requires their attention. But with practice, they learn to pause and ask, is this mine to carry? Sometimes the answer is yes, and they step in with compassion. Other times, the answer is no, and they let it go. This act of discernment doesn't diminish their empathy. It refines it. It teaches them that their role is not to absorb every burden, but to choose wisely where to direct their energy. Another element of balance lies in embracing solitude. For empaths, time alone is not just quiet time. It is healing time. It is in solitude that they reconnect with their own emotions, separate from everyone else's. It is in solitude that they can breathe freely without absorbing the noise of the outside world. This doesn't mean isolating themselves, but rather allowing space to return to their own center. Many empaths describe the relief of solitude as finally remembering their own voice after listening to others for too long. It is in this quiet space that they can reestablish who they are, beyond the pull of everyone else's feelings. Balance also means embracing the duality of the gift itself. Empaths often think they must choose between seeing their sensitivity as a blessing or seeing it as a curse. But the truth is, it can be both, sometimes even at the same time. The gift of empathy comes with beauty and with weight, with connection and with exhaustion. Accepting this duality is freeing because it removes the pressure to fit empathy neatly into one category. Instead of asking, is this a blessing or a curse? Empaths begin to say, It is both, and that is okay. This acceptance allows them to move with their gift more fluidly, rather than constantly struggling against it. In the journey toward balance, empaths also learn the importance of expressing their own needs clearly. For so long, they may have feared that speaking up would make them less kind or less supportive. But balance teaches them that their needs matter just as much as anyone else's. And when they begin to express those needs with clarity and honesty, they not only protect themselves, but also create healthier connections with the people around them. Communication becomes an act of alignment where their inner world matches their outer world.